underperforming classes that we didn't like 3 years later. I'm gonna take the low-hanging fruit here, Rick. I'm gonna take the one of the final draft classes from John Gruden and Mike Mayock. I don't know if Mike Mayock would prefer me to give it all on John Gruden or not, but, um, they had some curious draft classes during John Gruden's tenure. Henry Ruggs going 12th overall is not a surprise. They like speed. There was some talk late that he might be one of the first wide receivers selected. He ended up being the first wide receiver taken. He had some off-field issues. He got in a car accident that killed a woman, and I don't know if it's been settled yet, but he could potentially be serving some jail time. Damon Arnett, an absolutely atrocious pick. I didn't think he was a first round talent. Last I recalled, he was waving a gun around on social media and making threats, and I think that's part of the reason he got cut. Lynn Bowden Jr., he was a fun player coming out of Kentucky, but there's no real position for him. He played wide quarterback a lot his final year at Kentucky because of injuries, and that was fun to watch, but that obviously wasn't going to be his final position. Unpolished as a wide receiver, but had a lot of athleticism. Brian Edwards, I thought, was a pretty good pick. Tanner Muse, the safety out of Clemson. I didn't understand that pick in the third round. He is bounced around a little bit. He's no longer in Las Vegas. John Simpson might end up being the best pick of this class. The guard out of Clemson, he's played a good amount. And Amik Robertson actually liked that pick coming out of Louisiana Tech. Undersized cornerback, plays in the slot, and again undersized, so sometimes he's a mismatch problem. But I think he plays with an edge. But the first 3 or 4 picks that just didn't work out for me. That said, Rick, you probably thought Henry Ruggs was going to go pretty high, right?
Yeah, because he ran fast.
Yeah,
And
right.
then Raiders are known to take speed anytime there was speed. And even when Al Davis was running the team, speed was the number one priority for that team.
Absolutely. In fact, they took, oh my gosh, I can't remember his name. They took the wide receiver who out of Maryland, who was a burner. He played for the Steelers later in his career, mostly on special teams.
Darius Hayward-Bay.
Darius Hayward-Bay, thank you. And that to me was a surprise pick at the time. I don't know if you remember your thoughts on Darius Hayward-Bay, but I would imagine you'd have him going top 15 or top 10 or wherever he went.
Yeah. No, he was a speed guy. I think he ran faster than everybody thought he was going to at the combine.
All right, Rick, a team that you were unimpressed with, and this draft is a tough draft as well for them, the Tennessee Titans. And oh boy. So Isaiah Wilson, the tackle out of Georgia, got some late first round buzz in the media. But I mean, you talk about it all the time. You guys know more about these players than the media do. Did you have any concerns about Isaiah Wilson off the field?
There was a lot of concerns.
Okay. Was he a first round talent on the field?
I thought he had upside. If you just grade the tape, he was the right tackle that was big, massive, very strong. So you can see what they saw in him with the potential to come in and be a starting right tackle. With just the other things that got caught up with him.
Christian Fulton, the cornerback out of LSU. I actually liked him a lot. He hasn't quite reached expectations, but I don't think him going 61st overall in the second round is a stretch. It just hasn't worked out.
Yeah, well, he started 26 games. I think in 21 was his best year. Had a down year last year. But he's in his career 4 interceptions, 20 PBUs, 20, like I said, 21 was his best season. So out of all this, he was probably the best pick.
Okay.
As far as coming in and contributing to a team.
Darrynton Evans, the running back, undersized out of App State. Third round feels a little rich, and it's easy to say now in the moment. I was like, okay, maybe they have some plans for him along with Derrick Henry, excuse me, and that offense, sort of a bull and then a little guy that can do sort of third down type things, but it just hasn't worked out.
No, and I think his last team, when he's no longer with them. You think last year he ended up in Chicago, so he's no longer with the team. Murchison is no longer with the team. He ended up with the Rams last year. McDonald never panned out, 0 games. And Chris Jackson is the only one besides Christian Fulton that is still with the team after this draft class.
Right. Darrynton Evans went to App State. Laurel Murchison went to North Carolina State, the defensive tackle. Cole McDonald went to Hawaii, the quarterback, and Chris Jackson, the safety, was from Marshall. So, you talk about trying to hit the jackpot on day 3, especially the 6th and 7th rounds. When you start drafting guys from smaller schools, that just makes it that much more difficult.
as long as they have some kind of trait to develop.
Okay.
And that's where we used analytics. That's where we try to identify guys with traits that our coaches thought had that they can work with to try to develop. So a lot of times the scout, as I always said, Saturday was the working man's day. In our first draft out in Vegas together, when you wore a tie, which was embarrassing, but that was you took it
Dress for the
off.
job you want, Rick.
Yeah, okay. But
All right.
yeah, but that was not a very good draft class.
All right. So Prisco and his redraft 3 years later regraded the 2020 draft, gave the Lions an F. He gave the Titans a D minus. Man, he gave a lot of D minuses. I want to talk about one team in particular that he gave a D minus. I want you to defend this. He gave the Detroit Lions a D minus. So that includes Jeffrey Okudah, who's battled injuries, has since been traded to Atlanta, the cornerback out of Ohio State. He was the 3rd overall pick. We talked about that earlier in the redraft. DeAndre Swift, who has since been traded to Debo's Eagles, 35th overall in the 2nd round, the running back out of Georgia. Julian Nakwara, the defensive end out of Notre Dame. Jonah Jackson, who's actually had a really good career
Yep.
on the inside for Detroit, also in the 3rd round. Logan Stenberg, depth on the interior out of Kentucky, offensive line. Quentin Cephas, who's contributed a little bit.
He's cut. He the receiver out of Wisconsin, he got cut up in the gambling thing this past offseason.
Oh, so he just got cut a few weeks ago. Gotcha. And then that's about it. So D minus too rough or
Well, who's going to argue with Pete?
Devo, I know when Rick has nothing to say, he just doesn't want to divulge anything. He doesn't want to get his brother in trouble.
They did get a good starting guard out of there.
Yeah.
Okora had some pass rush. Swift was a good player. Okudah for the 3rd overall pick. You almost think that was a bust as of right now. See if he can resurrect what, because of the injuries and the durability, but we'll see how he resurrects his career if he does down in Atlanta. So, yes, I wouldn't give it a D minus. I think some other ones were worse than that. Not that I studied them all. Maybe a C minus.
Well, Chris,
You
if
got
you're listening,
to get a couple starters out of there. That's at least worth a C minus.